You know what's wild? Right now, as you're listening to this, your body is performing about 37 trillion cellular operations every single second. Yeah, you heard that right. Trillion. With a T. And you're not even thinking about it. You're just existing, breathing, blinking, being alive. But underneath all that casual existing, there's this absolutely insane symphony of biological processes happening that would make the most complex supercomputer look like a calculator from the 90s. Think about it. Your heart just beat. Again. And again. It's going to do that about 100,000 times today, without you telling it to. Your lungs just pulled in oxygen and pushed out carbon dioxide. Your kidneys filtered your blood. Your liver processed toxins. Your neurons fired. Your cells divided. Your immune system fought off invaders you didn't even know were there. All of this, every single moment, without you lifting a finger. And here's the kicker. Most of us walk around completely oblivious to this miracle happening inside us. We're so focused on our phones, our problems, our daily drama, that we forget we're basically piloting the most sophisticated biological machine in the known universe. I mean, we've sent robots to Mars. We've split the atom. We've created artificial intelligence, but we still can't fully replicate or even completely understand the human body. That's how complex you are. So tonight, we're going on a journey, not to some distant galaxy or ancient civilization. We're going inward. We're going to explore the landscape of you, the real you, the biological you, the you that exists beneath your skin, beyond your thoughts, deeper than your consciousness. We're going to talk about how your body actually works, and I promise you, it's going to be way more interesting than whatever's on Netflix. Now, I know what you're thinking. Physiology? That sounds like a high school biology class. Boring diagrams, memorizing parts, falling asleep at your desk. But here's the thing. When you actually understand what's happening inside you, when you realize the sheer absurdity and beauty of biological existence, it's not boring at all. It's absolutely mind-blowing. It's the kind of stuff that makes you lie awake at night thinking, wait, that's actually how it works? Let me give you an example. Your brain. Right now, your brain is using about 20% of your body's total energy, even though it only makes up about 2% of your body weight. It's running on roughly the same amount of power as a 20-watt light bulb. 20 watts. That's it. And with that tiny amount of energy, you're processing these words, remembering your childhood, planning tomorrow, feeling emotions, creating thoughts, dreaming dreams, and doing about 1 million other things simultaneously. Show me a computer that can do that on 20 watts. I'll wait. Or consider this. Every single cell in your body contains the complete instruction manual for building an entire you. DNA. About 3 billion base pairs of genetic code, all coiled up in a space so small, you need an electron microscope to see it. If you unwound all the DNA in all your cells and laid it end to end, it would stretch from Earth to the sun and back. 60 times. That's how much information you're carrying around. You're literally walking around with enough data to fill millions of books, and it's all stored in molecules smaller than the wavelength of light. But we're not going to just talk about the cool facts. We're going to understand the why and the how. Why does your stomach growl? How do you actually heal from a cut? What's really happening when you get goosebumps? Why do you yawn? What makes you feel pain? How does your body know what time it is? We're going to answer all of that and more. And the best part? This is the perfect thing to fall asleep to. Not because it's boring, but because understanding your body is actually deeply relaxing. There's something incredibly calming about learning how your physiology works. It grounds you. It connects you to yourself in a profound way. It reminds you that you're part of something larger, something ancient, something that's been evolving and perfecting itself for billions of years. So get comfortable. Lie down. Close your eyes if you want. Let your body do what it does best, which is basically everything, while we explore exactly how it does all those things. We're going to start from the moment you take a breath, and work our way through every major system in your body. By the end of this, you're going to understand yourself in a way you never have before. Your body is waiting to tell you its story. Let's listen. Ready? Take a deep breath. And let's begin. So you just took that breath I asked you to take. Good. Now let me tell you what actually just happened, because it's way more complicated and fascinating than you think. First, your brain sent a signal. You didn't consciously think, okay, time to contract my diaphragm, but your brainstem did. There's this tiny cluster of neurons in your medulla called the respiratory center, and it's been running your breathing on autopilot since the moment you were born. It's checking your blood constantly, measuring carbon dioxide levels, monitoring pH, making sure everything's balanced. And when it detected that your CO2 was getting a bit high, it said, all right, time to breathe. Your diaphragm, this dome-shaped muscle that sits right under your lungs, contracted and flattened out. When it did that, it created more space in your chest cavity. And here's where physics comes in. Your lungs don't actually have muscles of their own. They can't suck in air. Instead, your diaphragm creates negative pressure. It's like pulling the plunger back on a syringe. The air just rushes in to fill the vacuum. That air traveled through your nose or mouth, past your throat, down your trachea, and split into your two bronchi, one for each lung. Then those bronchi split, and split again, and again, like a tree, branching out into smaller and smaller branches. By the time the air reaches the end of the line, you've got these tiny little sacs called alveoli. You have about 300 million of them. If you spread them all out flat, they'd cover a tennis court. All that surface area packed into the space of 2 fists. And surrounding each alveolus is a network of capillaries, the smallest blood vessels in your body. The walls of the alveoli and the walls of the capillaries are so thin that oxygen and carbon dioxide can pass right through them. We're talking about membranes that are only 1 cell thick. That's thin enough that gas molecules can just diffuse across, moving from areas of high concentration to low concentration, like smoke spreading through a room. So, the oxygen in the air you just breathed in is now crossing over into your blood. It's binding to hemoglobin, these special protein molecules in your red blood cells that are basically oxygen taxis. Each hemoglobin molecule can carry 4 oxygen molecules. And each red blood cell has about 270 million hemoglobin molecules. That's over 1 billion oxygen molecules per red blood cell, and you have about 25 trillion red blood cells. The numbers are genuinely stupid. Meanwhile, the carbon dioxide that your cells produced as waste is traveling in the opposite direction. It's moving from your blood into your alveoli, getting ready to be exhaled. Carbon dioxide is actually what makes you feel like you need to breathe. Not lack of oxygen, but too much CO2. That's why holding your breath gets uncomfortable. It's not that you're running out of oxygen immediately, it's that carbon dioxide is building up and your brain is screaming at you to get rid of it. Now here's something cool. Your lungs are never completely empty. Even when you exhale as hard as you can, there's still about 1 liter of air left in there. It's called residual volume, and it serves a purpose. It keeps your alveoli from collapsing. If they fully deflated, they'd stick together like a wet plastic bag, and you'd have a hell of a time getting them open again. So there's always some air in there, keeping things inflated and ready for the next breath. Your breathing rate adjusts constantly based on what you're doing. Sleeping, you might breathe 12 to 15 times per minute. Running, that could jump to 40 or 50. Your body is incredibly sensitive to your oxygen needs. There are chemoreceptors in your arteries that are constantly monitoring your blood, reporting back to your brain, making tiny adjustments. It's a feedback loop that's been refined over millions of years of evolution. And get this, your left lung is slightly smaller than your right lung. Why? Because your heart takes up space on the left side of your chest. Your left lung has 2 lobes, your right lung has 3. Your body literally designed your lungs around your heart. Form follows function at the most intimate level. You can also control your breathing consciously, which is pretty unique. Most of your autonomic functions you can't voluntarily control. You can't make your stomach digest faster or tell your liver to detoxify harder. But breathing? You can hold it, speed it up, slow it down. Breathe deep or shallow. It's one of the few bridges between your conscious and unconscious nervous systems. That's why breathing exercises work for anxiety and stress. You're literally hacking into your autonomic nervous system and telling it to calm down. Every breath you take brings in about half a liter of air. You take about 20,000 breaths a day. That's roughly 11,000 liters of air flowing through your lungs every single day. And all of it, every single breath, is keeping you alive in ways you never think about. Breathing. The first thing you did when you were born. The last thing you'll do when you die. And in between, just this constant, rhythmic exchange of gases that powers everything else we're about to talk about. Now that oxygen is in your blood, we need to talk about the delivery system. Your heart. This fist-sized muscle in your chest that's been beating since you were about 3 weeks old as an embryo. Think about that. Before you had a brain, before you had eyes, before you had a face, you had a heartbeat. That's how fundamental this organ is. Your heart beats about once per second. Lub-dub. Lub-dub. That sound you hear through a stethoscope. That's your heart valves snapping shut. The lub is your tricuspid and mitral valves closing when your ventricles contract. The dub is your pulmonary and aortic valves closing when your ventricles relax. It's a perfectly choreographed sequence of mechanical movements that happens 100,000 times a day, 35 million times a year, and if you live to 80, about 3 billion times in your lifetime. 3 billion. Without a break. Without maintenance. Without you even thinking about it. Your heart doesn't get to rest. Even when you're sleeping, it's working, pumping, pushing blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels. That's enough to wrap around the earth twice. And it's all packed inside you. Here's how it works. Your heart has 4 chambers, 2 atria on top, 2 ventricles on the bottom. The right side of your heart handles deoxygenated blood. The left side handles oxygenated blood. They never mix, but they work in perfect synchronization. Deoxygenated blood from your body flows into your right atrium. When it fills up, the right atrium contracts and pushes blood through the tricuspid valve into your right ventricle. Then your right ventricle contracts hard, pushing that blood through the pulmonary valve into your pulmonary arteries, which carry it to your lungs. This is where that gas exchange we just talked about happens. The blood picks up oxygen, drops off carbon dioxide, and comes back to your heart. But it doesn't go back to the right side. It comes back to the left atrium. This oxygen-rich blood fills the left atrium, which then contracts and pushes blood through the mitral valve into your left ventricle. And here's where the real power happens. Your left ventricle has the thickest walls of any heart chamber because it has the hardest job. It needs to push blood out with enough force to reach every single cell in your body, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. When it contracts, it pushes blood through the aortic valve into your aorta, the largest artery in your body. And from there, blood branches out into progressively smaller arteries, then arterioles, then capillaries. Those capillaries I mentioned earlier, they're everywhere. Every tissue in your body, except for cartilage, is within a hair's width of a capillary. That's how your cells get fed. Blood flows through these microscopic vessels. Oxygen and nutrients diffuse out. Waste products diffuse in. And then the blood makes its way back through venules, veins, and eventually the vena cava, back to the right side of your heart. And the whole cycle starts over. The entire circuit takes about 1 minute. In that minute, your heart has pushed about 5 liters of blood through your entire body. That's all the blood you have, circulated completely in 60 seconds. During exercise, your heart can pump up to 20 or even 30 liters per minute. It's variable speed, responding in real time to what you need. And here's what's really amazing. Your heart has its own electrical system. It doesn't need your brain to tell it to beat. There's a group of cells in your right atrium called the sinoatrial node, the SA node, and it's your natural pacemaker. These cells spontaneously generate electrical impulses. They just fire, rhythmically, automatically. That impulse spreads through your atria, making them contract. Then it hits the atrioventricular node, the AV node, which delays the signal just slightly before sending it down to your ventricles, making them contract. This is why heart transplants work. You can remove someone's heart, put it in another person, and even though the nerves are severed, the heart keeps beating. Because the beat comes from within the heart itself, your brain can speed it up or slow it down through hormones and nerve signals. But the fundamental rhythm? That's intrinsic to the heart. Your heart also has its own blood supply. The coronary arteries branch off right at the base of your aorta, the first exit, making sure your heart muscle gets fresh oxygenated blood before anywhere else. Because if your heart stops getting blood, you've got about 4 minutes before brain damage starts. Your heart is that critical. Blood pressure is just the force of blood pushing against your artery walls. When your left ventricle contracts, that's your systolic pressure, the top number. When it relaxes, that's your diastolic pressure, the bottom number. Normal is around 120/80. Too high, and you're straining your vessels, increasing your risk of damage. Too low, and your organs might not get enough blood flow. Your heart rate changes constantly. Stress, excitement, fear, exercise, illness, even just standing up, all of these things affect your heart rate. There are receptors in your arteries called baroreceptors that detect changes in pressure and send signals to your brain, which then adjusts your heart rate and the diameter of your blood vessels to maintain equilibrium. It's another one of those feedback loops your body runs without you ever knowing. Let's talk about what's actually flowing through those 60,000 miles of vessels. Blood. You've got about 5 liters of it, which is roughly 8% of your body weight. But blood isn't just red liquid. It's incredibly complex, and it does way more than just carry oxygen. Blood is actually a tissue. A liquid tissue, which sounds weird, but that's what it is. It's made up of cells floating in plasma. Plasma is the liquid part, about 55% of your blood volume. It's mostly water, but it's also got proteins, electrolytes, hormones, nutrients, and waste products dissolved in it. Plasma is your body's transport medium, the river that everything else floats in. Then you've got your cells. Red blood cells make up most of them, about 40 to 45% of your blood volume. These are the oxygen carriers we talked about. They're shaped like little discs with dimples on both sides, kind of like a donut that never quite made it all the way through. That shape gives them maximum surface area for gas exchange. And here's something wild. Red blood cells don't have nuclei. Most cells have a nucleus with DNA, but red blood cells threw theirs out during development to make more room for hemoglobin. They're basically oxygen-carrying shells. They live for about 120 days. Every second, you're making about 2 million new red blood cells in your bone marrow, and you're destroying about 2 million old ones in your spleen and liver. It's a constant cycle of creation and destruction. Your bone marrow is cranking out these cells at an absurd rate, and you never feel it happening. Then you've got white blood cells, the soldiers of your immune system. You have way fewer of these than red blood cells. Maybe 1 white blood cell for every 600 to 700 red blood cells. But they're critically important. There are different types, each with a specific job. Neutrophils are your first responders. When you get a cut or an infection, these guys show up first. They can actually squeeze through the walls of your blood vessels and move into tissues. They hunt down bacteria and just engulf them, literally eating the invaders and destroying them with enzymes and toxic oxygen compounds. Neutrophils are basically kamikaze cells. They do their job and die, and that's what pus is, by the way. Dead neutrophils and bacteria. Lymphocytes are your adaptive immune cells. B cells make antibodies, these Y-shaped proteins that tag specific invaders for destruction. T cells directly kill infected cells or coordinate immune responses. These cells have memory. Once they've seen a pathogen, they remember it, sometimes for decades. That's how vaccines work. You're training your lymphocytes to recognize an enemy before you ever encounter it for real. Monocytes turn into macrophages, the big eaters. These cells gobble up debris, dead cells, and pathogens. They're also involved in wound healing and can even fuse together to form giant cells when dealing with something too big for one macrophage to handle. Eosinophils and basophils deal with parasites and allergic reactions. They're less common, but no less important when you need them. And then you've got platelets. These aren't even whole cells. They're fragments of larger cells called megakaryocytes. Platelets are your emergency repair kit. When a blood vessel gets damaged, platelets rush to the scene, stick to the damaged area, and clump together to form a plug. They also release chemicals that activate the clotting cascade, a series of protein reactions that ultimately forms a fibrin mesh, the structural framework of a blood clot. This clotting system is brilliant. You've got about a dozen different clotting factors, proteins that activate each other in sequence. It's like a row of dominoes. One tips over, which tips over the next, which tips over the next, and the cascade builds until you get a solid clot. But your body also has anti-clotting factors, proteins that prevent clots from forming when you don't need them and break down clots after the damage is repaired. It's a delicate balance. Too much clotting, you get dangerous blood clots that can cause strokes or heart attacks. Too little, and you can bleed out from a minor injury. Your blood also regulates temperature. When you're hot, blood vessels near your skin dilate, bringing warm blood close to the surface where heat can radiate away. That's why you get flushed when you exercise. When you're cold, those vessels constrict, keeping warm blood deeper in your body to protect your vital organs. Your extremities get cold first because your body is prioritizing your core. Blood also maintains pH balance. Your body is incredibly picky about pH. It wants to stay around 7.4, slightly alkaline. Drift too far in either direction and enzymes stop working. Proteins denature. Cells die. Your blood has buffer systems, mainly bicarbonate, that soak up excess acid or base to keep everything stable. Your lungs and kidneys also help with this, adjusting how much CO2 you exhale and how much acid you excrete in urine. Every single function we're going to talk about depends on blood. It's the medium through which your body communicates with itself, transports resources, removes waste, and defends against threats. 5 liters of complex living tissue, constantly circulating, constantly working, keeping you alive. All right, so we've talked about how oxygen gets in and gets delivered. But your cells need more than just oxygen. They need fuel, energy, nutrients. And that means we need to talk about eating, about digestion, about the 30-foot-long processing plant running from your mouth to your anus. Digestion actually starts before food even enters your mouth. You see food, you smell it, and your brain kicks off the cephalic phase of digestion. Your salivary glands start producing saliva. Your stomach starts producing acid. Your body is preparing for the meal before the first bite. It's anticipatory, proactive. Your body knows what's coming. Then you take a bite. Your teeth, which are the hardest substances in your body, harder than bone, start mechanically breaking down food. You've got incisors for cutting, canines for tearing, and molars for grinding. It's a specialized toolkit. Meanwhile, your tongue is mixing everything with saliva. Saliva is way more interesting than you think. You produce about 1 to 2 liters of it every day. It's mostly water, but it also contains enzymes, the most important being amylase. Amylase starts breaking down starches right there in your mouth, converting them into simpler sugars. This is why if you chew a piece of bread for a long time, it starts tasting sweet. The amylase is doing its job. Saliva also contains mucus, which lubricates food so you can swallow it. It has antibacterial compounds to help protect against infection. It has minerals that help remineralize your teeth. And it acts as a buffer, neutralizing acids that would otherwise damage your enamel. All of this in that liquid you don't think twice about. When you swallow, it's not just gravity doing the work. Swallowing is a complex neuromuscular process. Your tongue pushes food back into your pharynx, your throat. A flap called the epiglottis folds down over your trachea, so food doesn't go into your lungs. Then waves of muscular contractions called peristalsis push the food down your esophagus toward your stomach. These waves are so strong you could swallow while doing a handstand, and food would still reach your stomach. Peristalsis, not gravity, is what moves food through your digestive tract. The esophagus is about 10 inches long. At the bottom, there's a sphincter, a ring of muscle called the lower esophageal. Sphincter, that normally stays closed to keep stomach acid from flowing back up. When food arrives, it relaxes, lets the food through, then closes again. When this sphincter doesn't work properly, you get acid reflux, heartburn, that burning sensation as stomach acid splashes up into your esophagus, where it doesn't belong. Now we're in your stomach. This J-shaped organ can stretch to hold about 2 liters of food, though it's usually much less than that. Your stomach has 3 main jobs: store food, mix it up, and start breaking down proteins. The inside of your stomach is an incredibly hostile environment. The pH can drop as low as 1.5 to 2, which is comparable to battery acid. If you dripped stomach acid on your hand, it would burn. But your stomach lining is protected by a thick layer of mucus. The cells of your stomach lining are constantly secreting this mucus, creating a barrier between the acid and the tissue. Even so, your stomach lining completely replaces itself every 3 to 5 days. The cells are constantly dying and being replaced because the environment is so harsh. Your stomach produces about 2 liters of gastric juice per day. This juice contains hydrochloric acid, which kills most bacteria and denatures proteins, unfolding them so they're easier to break down. It also contains pepsinogen, which gets converted to pepsin, an enzyme that chops proteins into smaller pieces. Pepsin only works in acidic environments, which is why your stomach needs to be so acidic. The stomach has 3 layers of muscle, and they contract in waves, churning and mixing the food with gastric juice, turning it into a semi-liquid mush called chyme. This process takes anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, depending on what you ate. Proteins and fats take longer to break down than carbohydrates. But here's something most people don't realize. Very little absorption happens in your stomach. A bit of water, some alcohol, a few medications, but almost no nutrients. Your stomach is mainly about breaking things down and preparing them for the next stage. The real absorption happens later, in your small intestine. So after a few hours of churning, your stomach starts releasing chyme through the pyloric sphincter, another ring of muscle, into the first part of your small intestine, the duodenum. It does this slowly, squirting small amounts at a time so your small intestine doesn't get overwhelmed. And this is where digestion really kicks into high gear. Your small intestine is about 20 feet long, coiled up in your abdomen. It has 3 sections: the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. And this is where most of the chemical digestion and absorption of nutrients happens. Your small intestine is basically the workhorse of your digestive system. When chyme enters the duodenum, it's acidic, so your pancreas releases bicarbonate to neutralize it, bringing the pH up to about 7 or 8. The pancreas also releases a cocktail of digestive enzymes. Lipase breaks down fats. Trypsin and chymotrypsin break down proteins. Amylase continues breaking down carbohydrates. It's a full-scale chemical assault on whatever you ate. Your liver also gets in on the action by producing bile. Bile is this yellowish-green fluid that's stored in your gallbladder and released into the duodenum when you eat. Bile doesn't contain enzymes. Instead, it contains bile salts, which emulsify fats. They break big fat droplets into smaller ones, increasing the surface area so lipase can work more. Effectively, think of it like dish soap breaking up grease. Same principle. As chyme moves through your small intestine, pushed along by those same peristaltic waves, nutrients get broken down into their basic building blocks. Proteins become amino acids. Carbohydrates become simple sugars like glucose. Fats become fatty acids and glycerol. And all of these molecules need to be absorbed through the intestinal wall into your bloodstream. This is where the design of your small intestine becomes absolutely genius. The inside surface isn't smooth. It's covered with millions of tiny finger-like projections, called villi, and each villus is covered with even tinier projections called microvilli. This massively increases the surface area. If you flattened out your small intestine completely, it would cover about 250 square meters. That's roughly the size of a tennis court. All that surface area, packed into 20 feet of intestine. Each villus contains a network of capillaries and a lymphatic vessel called a lacteal. Water-soluble nutrients like amino acids and simple sugars get absorbed directly into the capillaries. They enter your bloodstream and head straight to your liver through the hepatic portal vein. Your liver then processes these nutrients, stores some, releases some, converts some into other things you need. Fat-soluble nutrients take a different route. Fatty acids and glycerol get absorbed into the cells lining your intestine, where they're reassembled into triglycerides and packaged into little transport particles called chylomicrons. These are too big to enter capillaries directly, so they enter the lacteal, which drains into your lymphatic system. Eventually, this lymph fluid enters your bloodstream through a large vein near your heart, and the fats get distributed throughout your body. Your small intestine is also where you absorb vitamins and minerals. Vitamin B12, for example, requires a special protein called intrinsic factor, which is produced by your stomach to be absorbed in the ileum. Iron absorption is tightly regulated because too much iron is toxic, so your intestinal cells only absorb what you need. Calcium absorption depends on vitamin D. It's all interconnected. By the time chyme has traveled through your entire small intestine, a process that takes about 3 to 5 hours, most of the nutrients have been extracted. What's left is water, indigestible fiber, dead cells, bacteria, and waste products. This mixture enters your large intestine, also called your colon. Your colon is about 5 feet long and much wider than your small intestine, hence the name. Its main job is to absorb water and electrolytes, turning liquid waste into solid feces. Your colon also houses trillions of bacteria, your gut microbiome, which we'll get to in a moment because it deserves its own discussion. The colon has different sections. The cecum, where the small intestine connects and where your appendix hangs out. The ascending colon goes up the right side of your abdomen. The transverse colon crosses from right to left. The descending colon goes down the left side. The sigmoid colon makes an S-curve. And finally, the rectum stores feces until you're ready to defecate. Peristalsis in the colon is slower and happens in waves, moving waste along gradually. This is where most of the water gets reabsorbed. About 1.5 liters of water enter your colon every day, but only about 100 to 200 milliliters leave in your feces. Your body is very good at water conservation. When the rectum fills with feces, stretch receptors send signals to your brain. You feel the urge to defecate. You head to the bathroom, and when you're ready, you relax your external anal sphincter, the one you have voluntary control over, and use abdominal muscles to increase pressure. The feces move through the anal canal and out. Congratulations, you've completed digestion. The entire journey from mouth to anus takes about 24 to 72 hours, depending on what you ate and your individual physiology. Fiber speeds things up. Fatty foods slow things down. Stress can affect transit time. Every body is a bit different. But here's what's remarkable. This entire system operates largely on autopilot. You don't tell your stomach to produce acid. You don't consciously trigger peristalsis. You don't decide when to release bile. It all happens automatically, orchestrated by the enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain. There are about 100 million neurons in your gut, more than in your spinal cord. These neurons can coordinate digestion independently of your brain. Your gut can literally think for itself. And the energy we get from all this? Every cell in your body runs on ATP, adenosine triphosphate. It's the universal energy currency. Glucose gets broken down through cellular respiration to produce ATP. Fats get broken down into fatty acids, which also produce ATP, even more efficiently than glucose. Amino acids can be used for energy in a pinch, though they're primarily for building proteins. Your body is constantly making ATP. Every second, you're producing and consuming about your entire body weight in ATP over the course of a day. It's being created and destroyed constantly. This endless cycle of energy conversion that powers every movement, every thought, every heartbeat. Digestion is how we take the physical world and convert it into ourselves. We eat plants and animals, break them down into their constituent molecules, absorb those molecules, and use them to build and fuel our own cells. In a very real sense, you are what you eat. The atoms in your body right now were once part of something else. It's beautiful and strange when you think about it. Now we need to talk about waste, because all this metabolism, all this cellular activity, produces waste products. mostly in the form of nitrogenous waste from protein breakdown. And if that waste builds up, it becomes toxic. This is where your kidneys come in. Two bean-shaped organs sitting just below your rib cage on either side of your spine. Your kidneys filter your entire blood volume about 60 times per day. That's roughly 180 liters of blood filtered every single day. And from that, they produce about 1 to 2 liters of urine. That means 99% of what they filter gets reabsorbed back into your bloodstream. They're incredibly selective about what they keep and what they excrete. Each kidney contains about 1 million nephrons, the functional units of the kidney. Each nephron is like a microscopic filtration factory. Blood enters through a tiny ball of capillaries called a glomerulus, which sits inside a cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule. The pressure of blood forces water, glucose, amino acids, salts, and waste products through the capillary walls into the capsule. But blood cells and large proteins are too big to pass through. This is the filtrate, the raw material that will become urine. But this filtrate contains a lot of stuff your body still needs. So as it flows through the tubule of the nephron, your body takes back what it wants. Glucose gets completely reabsorbed, assuming your blood sugar isn't too high. Most of the water gets reabsorbed. Electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and chloride get reabsorbed in carefully controlled amounts. What's left is concentrated waste, urea mainly, plus excess water and electrolytes. Your kidneys don't just filter waste though. They're also crucial for regulating blood pressure. When blood pressure drops, your kidneys release an enzyme called renin, which triggers a cascade that ultimately causes blood vessels to constrict and stimulates your body to retain more salt and water, raising blood pressure. When blood pressure is too high, your kidneys excrete more salt and water to bring it down. They also regulate pH, excreting hydrogen ions when your blood gets too acidic and bicarbonate when it gets too alkaline. They regulate the concentration of electrolytes in your blood, which is critical for nerve and muscle function. They even produce hormones. Erythropoietin, which stimulates red blood cell production, and they activate vitamin D, which you need for calcium absorption. The urine drains from your kidneys through tubes called ureters into your bladder, a stretchy muscular sac that can hold about 400 to 600 milliliters of urine. Stretch receptors in your bladder wall send signals to your brain when it's getting full. You feel the urge to urinate. When you do, your bladder muscle contracts, sphincters relax, and urine flows out through your urethra. Your kidneys are working every second of every day, filtering, reabsorbing, secreting, regulating. If they fail, waste builds up in your blood. This is called uremia, and it's life-threatening. This is why people with kidney failure need dialysis, a machine that artificially filters their blood. The kidneys are absolutely essential. And here's something interesting. You can live with just one kidney. People donate kidneys all the time. The remaining kidney compensates, increasing in size and function. It's not ideal, but it works. Your body has redundancy built in. Let's go back to your gut for a minute, because I promised we'd talk about the microbiome. You are not alone in your body. You're colonized by trillions of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microorganisms. Most of them live in your large intestine. You have more bacterial cells in your gut than you have human cells in your entire body. Think about that. You're more bacteria than human, at least by cell count. These aren't invaders. They're partners. This is a symbiotic relationship that's been evolving for millions of years. These bacteria do things for you that you can't do for yourself. They break down dietary fiber into short-chain fatty acids, which your colon cells use for energy. They synthesize certain vitamins, like vitamin K and some B vitamins. They help train your immune system, teaching it to distinguish between harmless bacteria and actual threats. They also compete with harmful bacteria for resources and space, crowding them out before they can cause problems. A healthy microbiome is a protective microbiome. When you take antibiotics, you kill off a lot of these beneficial bacteria along with the harmful ones you're targeting. That's why antibiotics can cause digestive problems. You've disrupted the ecosystem. Your microbiome is unique to you. It's like a fingerprint, shaped by your genetics, your diet, where you live, your lifestyle. Babies born via C-section have different microbiomes than babies born vaginally because they're exposed to different bacteria. Breastfed babies have different microbiomes than formula-fed babies. And your microbiome affects more than just digestion. There's growing evidence that it influences your immune system, your metabolism, even your brain function. The gut-brain axis is real. Your gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA. They communicate with your brain through the vagus nerve. Some researchers think imbalances in the gut microbiome might contribute to conditions like depression, anxiety, obesity, and autoimmune diseases. We're still figuring out all the connections, but it's clear that these bacteria are far more important than we once thought. You feed your microbiome every time you eat. They like fiber, which you can't digest, but they can. They don't like highly processed foods and excessive sugar, which can promote the growth of less beneficial species. Diversity in your diet leads to diversity in your microbiome, which is generally a good thing. Now we need to talk about the nervous system, because everything we've discussed so far needs to be coordinated, and that coordination happens through electrical and chemical signals traveling through the most complex structure in the known universe. Your nervous system. Let's start with the building block. The neuron. A neuron is a specialized cell designed to transmit electrical signals. It has a cell body with a nucleus, branching dendrites that receive signals from other neurons, and a long axon that sends signals to other neurons. Some axons are tiny, less than a millimeter. Others stretch for over a meter, like the ones running from your spinal cord to your toes. A neuron at rest maintains a voltage difference across its cell membrane, about 70 millivolts. The inside is negative relative to the outside. This is the resting potential, maintained by ion pumps that constantly push sodium out and potassium in. When a neuron receives enough stimulation, ion channels open. Sodium rushes in, the voltage swings positive, and an action potential fires. This is an all-or-nothing event. Either the neuron fires or it doesn't. There's no partial signal. The action potential travels down the axon like a wave. When it reaches the end, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that cross the tiny gap, the synapse, to the next neuron. These neurotransmitters bind to receptors on the receiving neuron, either exciting it, making it more likely to fire, or inhibiting it, making it less likely to fire. Your brain has about 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can connect to thousands of other neurons. That's trillions of synapses, trillions of possible connections. The number of potential neural pathways in your brain exceeds the number of atoms in the universe. That's the level of complexity we're dealing with. Your nervous system is divided into two main parts. The central nervous system, which is your brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which is everything else, all the nerves extending out to your body. The peripheral nervous system has two divisions. The somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements and processes sensory information. When you decide to pick up a cup, your somatic nervous system is what makes your muscles contract in the right sequence. The autonomic nervous system controls involuntary functions, things you don't consciously think about, like heart rate, digestion, respiration, all that stuff we've been talking about. The autonomic system itself has two divisions that generally oppose each other. The sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. It kicks in during stress, danger, excitement. It increases heart rate, dilates pupils, redirects blood to muscles, slows digestion. It's preparing your body for action. The parasympathetic nervous system is rest and digest. It does the opposite, slows heart rate, constricts pupils, promotes digestion, conserves energy. It's active when you're relaxed, when you're safe, when you're sleeping. These two systems are constantly balancing each other, adjusting your physiology moment to moment based on what you're doing and what's happening around you. It's dynamic equilibrium, another feedback system. The brain itself is organized into different regions, each specializing in different functions. Your cerebrum is the big wrinkly part you think of when you picture a brain. It's divided into two hemispheres, connected by a thick bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. Each hemisphere has 4 lobes. The frontal lobe, right behind your forehead, is involved in planning, decision-making, personality, speech production, and voluntary movement. Damage to the frontal lobe can change who you are as a person. There's a famous case of a man named Phineas Gage who had an iron rod blown through his frontal lobe in an accident. He survived, but his personality completely changed. He became impulsive, inappropriate, unable to plan. That's how critical this region is. The parietal lobe, at the top and back of your head, processes sensory information: touch, temperature, pain, body position. It helps you navigate space and recognize objects by touch. The temporal lobe, on the sides near your ears, is involved in processing sound, memory, and language comprehension. Damage here can cause problems understanding speech or recognizing faces. The occipital lobe, at the very back, processes visual information. Your eyes don't see. Your occipital lobe sees. Your eyes just gather photons and convert them to electrical signals. The actual processing, the construction of visual perception, happens in your occipital lobe. Beneath the cerebrum, you've got the cerebellum, the little brain. It's in charge of coordinating movement and maintaining balance. When you learn a new physical skill, like playing an instrument or riding a bike, your cerebellum is heavily involved. Once a movement pattern is learned, it becomes automatic, and your cerebellum can execute it without conscious thought. The brainstem connects your brain to your spinal cord. It contains the midbrain, pons, and medulla. These regions control vital functions like breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, swallowing, and sleep-wake cycles. Damage to the ihaois brainstem is often fatal because these functions are so fundamental. Deep inside your brain, you've got structures like the thalamus, which acts as a relay station for sensory information, and the hypothalamus, which regulates body temperature, hunger, thirst, and hormones. The hypothalamus is tiny, about the size of an almond, but it's incredibly important. Then there's the limbic system, involved in emotion and memory. The amygdala processes fear and emotional responses. The hippocampus is critical for forming new memories. Patients with hippocampal damage can't form new long-term memories, though they can remember things from before the damage. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. Neurons are metabolically expensive. They're constantly firing, constantly maintaining their resting potentials, constantly synthesizing neurotransmitters. And unlike most cells, neurons can't store energy. They need a constant supply of glucose and oxygen. Cut off blood flow to the brain for more than a few minutes, and neurons start dying. This is what happens during a stroke. Either a blood clot blocks an artery, or a vessel ruptures, and part of the brain loses its blood supply. Those neurons die, and whatever functions they controlled are lost or impaired. The brain has some plasticity, the ability to rewire itself, so sometimes other regions can take over lost functions, especially in younger people. But there's a limit. Your brain is also constantly changing. Neuroplasticity. Every time you learn something new, your brain physically changes. New synapses form. Existing ones strengthen or weaken. The structure of your brain right now is different than it was yesterday, and it'll be different tomorrow. You're literally reshaping your brain with every experience, every thought, every action. Your brain would be useless without information from the outside world. That's where your senses come in. You've got way more than 5 senses, by the way. The whole 5 senses thing is oversimplified. But let's start with the classics. Vision. Light enters your eye through the cornea, passes through the pupil, and hits the lens, which focuses it onto the retina at the back of your eye. The retina is lined with photoreceptor cells, rods which detect light and dark and work well in low light, and cones which detect color and work best in bright light. You have 3 types of cones, each sensitive to different wavelengths of light: red, green, and blue. Your brain combines the signals from these cones to create your perception of color. When light hits a photoreceptor, it triggers a chemical reaction that generates an electrical signal. These signals travel through several layers of neurons in your retina, get processed and refined, and then travel through your optic nerve to your brain. Your visual cortex takes these signals and constructs what you perceive as sight. It's doing edge detection, motion detection, color processing, depth perception, object recognition, all in parallel, all instantaneously. And your brain fills in gaps. You have a blind spot where your optic nerve exits your retina, but you don't perceive a hole in your vision because your brain interpolates the missing information based on surrounding context. Your vision is a construction, a best guess based on available data, not a perfect reproduction of reality. Hearing. Sound waves enter your ear canal and vibrate your eardrum. That vibration gets transmitted through 3 tiny bones in your middle ear, the ossicles, which amplify the vibration and transmit it to the cochlea in your inner ear. The cochlea is a fluid-filled spiral structure lined with hair cells. Different frequencies cause different parts of the cochlea to vibrate, bending different hair cells. When a hair cell bends, it fires, sending a signal to your brain. Your brain interprets the pattern of which hair cells are firing and how fast to determine pitch and volume. Your inner ear also controls balance through the vestibular system. You have 3 semicircular canals oriented in different planes, each filled with fluid and containing hair cells. When you move your head, the fluid shifts, bending the hair cells, telling your brain which direction you're moving. You also have structures that detect linear acceleration and gravity. This is how you know which way is up and whether you're moving, even with your eyes closed. Taste and smell are chemical senses. Taste buds on your tongue contain receptor cells that respond to 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. Umami is the savory taste of glutamate, found in meat, cheese, and tomatoes. Different parts of your tongue aren't specialized for different tastes, by the way. That's a myth. All taste buds can detect all tastes, but most of what you perceive as taste is actually smell. Olfactory receptors in your nasal cavity detect airborne molecules. You have about 400 different types of olfactory receptors, each responsive to different molecular shapes. Your brain combines the signals from these receptors to identify thousands of distinct smells. This is why food tastes bland when you have a stuffy nose. You're not tasting it properly because you can't smell it. Touch is actually several senses: pressure, vibration, temperature, and pain. You have different receptors for each. Mechanoreceptors respond to pressure and vibration. Thermoreceptors respond to temperature. Nociceptors respond to potentially damaging stimuli, which you perceive as pain. These receptors are distributed all over your skin and deeper tissues, with higher concentrations in sensitive areas like your fingertips and lips. Pain is particularly interesting. It's unpleasant by design. It's your body's alarm system telling you that something is wrong and you need to do something about it. Acute pain is protective. But chronic pain, pain that persists after an injury has healed, serves no useful purpose and is its own medical condition. Then you've got proprioception, your sense of body position. Receptors in your muscles, tendons, and joints tell your brain where your limbs are in space. Close your eyes and touch your nose. You can do that because of proprioception. Without it, you'd have to visually guide every movement. You also have interoception, awareness of internal body states: hunger, thirst, need to use the bathroom, your heartbeat, your breathing. These signals come from receptors throughout your body, monitoring various physiological parameters. All these sensory streams are flowing into your brain constantly, being integrated, processed, and interpreted. Your conscious experience is a tiny fraction of the total information your brain is handling. Most of it gets filtered out. Your brain only brings to your attention what it deems important or novel. Otherwise, you'd be overwhelmed. We've talked about the nervous system, which uses electrical signals and neurotransmitters for fast, precise communication. But your body has another communication system that's slower but just as important. The endocrine system. Hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers produced by glands and released into your bloodstream. They travel throughout your body and affect any cell with the right receptor. Unlike neurotransmitters, which work locally at synapses, hormones are broadcast signals. and they can have effects that last minutes, hours, or even days. Your pituitary gland, a pea-sized structure hanging from the bottom of your brain, is often called the master gland because it controls many other glands. But really, your hypothalamus is in charge. The hypothalamus produces releasing hormones that tell the pituitary what to do, and the pituitary produces hormones that tell other glands what to do. It's a hierarchy of control. Growth hormone from the pituitary stimulates growth during childhood and adolescence and helps regulate metabolism throughout life. Prolactin stimulates milk production in nursing mothers. Antidiuretic hormone tells your kidneys to conserve water. Oxytocin triggers uterine contractions during childbirth and is involved in social bonding and trust. Your thyroid gland in your neck produces thyroid hormones, which regulate your metabolic rate. Too much and you are hyperactive, anxious, losing weight. Too little and you're sluggish, cold, gaining weight. Your thyroid is controlled by thyroid-stimulating hormone from the pituitary, which is controlled by thyrotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. Feedback loops everywhere. Your adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. The outer part, the cortex, produces cortisol, your main stress hormone. Cortisol increases blood sugar, suppresses immune function, and helps you respond to stress. It's released in a daily rhythm, high in the morning to get you going, low at night to help you sleep. Chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated, which can cause all sorts of problems. The adrenal cortex also produces aldosterone, which regulates salt and water balance, and small amounts of sex hormones. The inner part, the medulla, produces adrenaline and noradrenaline, the fight or flight hormones. When you're startled or scared, these hormones dump into your bloodstream within seconds, increasing heart rate, dilating airways, mobilizing energy stores, preparing you for action. Your pancreas produces insulin and glucagon, which regulate blood sugar. After you eat, blood sugar rises, and your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin tells cells to take up glucose from the blood and tells your liver to store it as glycogen. Between meals, blood sugar drops and your pancreas releases glucagon. Glucagon tells your liver to break down glycogen and release glucose. It's a balancing act to keep blood sugar in a narrow range. In type 1 diabetes, the immune system destroys the insulin-producing cells. Without insulin, blood sugar rises, dangerously high. In type 2 diabetes, cells become resistant to insulin, so even though insulin is present, it doesn't work as well. Both conditions require careful management to prevent complications. Your gonads, ovaries in females and testes in males, produce sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone in females, regulate the menstrual cycle, maintain pregnancy, and affect bone density, mood, and cardiovascular health. Testosterone in males stimulates sperm production, muscle growth, bone density, and sex drive. Both sexes produce both types of hormones, just in different amounts. During puberty, increased sex hormones trigger the development of secondary sexual characteristics. Breast development and menstruation in girls, deepening voice and facial hair in boys, growth spurts in both. It's a dramatic transformation orchestrated entirely by hormones. The pineal gland produces melatonin, which regulates your sleep-wake cycle. Melatonin rises in the evening as it gets dark, making you sleepy, and falls in the morning as it gets light, helping you wake up. Artificial light, especially blue light from screens, can suppress melatonin production, which is why staring at your phone before bed can mess with your sleep. Hormones also regulate appetite. Leptin, produced by fat cells, tells your brain you have enough energy stored and don't need to eat. Ghrelin, produced by your stomach, tells your brain you're hungry. After you eat, ghrelin drops and other hormones like cholecystokinin rise, signaling fullness. This is why eating slowly helps you feel satisfied. You're giving your hormones time to kick in. Your body is constantly adjusting hormone levels based on feedback. It's another layer of regulation, slower than neural control, but equally critical. Hormone imbalances can cause wide-ranging symptoms because hormones affect so many different tissues and systems. Let's talk about muscles. You've got over 600 muscles in your body, making up about 40% of your body weight. There are three types: skeletal muscle, which moves your bones; cardiac muscle, found only in your heart; and smooth muscle, found in your blood vessels, digestive tract, bladder, and other internal organs. Skeletal muscle is what people usually mean when they talk about muscles. It's under voluntary control, though a lot of the time you're not consciously controlling it. Walking, for example, is mostly automatic once you've learned it. Skeletal muscles are attached to bones by tendons, tough bands of connective tissue. When a muscle contracts, it pulls on a bone, creating movement. Muscles can only pull, not push, so they work in pairs. Flex your arm. Your biceps contracts, pulling your forearm up. Now extend it. Your biceps relaxes and your triceps contracts, pulling your forearm back down. Agonist and antagonist. For every movement, there's a muscle doing the work and another muscle that does the opposite. At the microscopic level, muscle is made of bundles of muscle fibers, which are bundles of myofibrils, which are made of repeating units called sarcomeres. Sarcomeres are where contraction actually happens. They're made of two types of protein filaments, thick filaments of myosin and thin filaments of actin, arranged in an overlapping pattern. When a nerve signal reaches a muscle, it triggers the release of calcium inside the muscle cells. Calcium binds to proteins on the actin filaments, exposing binding sites. Myosin heads grab onto actin and pull, sliding the filaments past each other, shortening the sarcomere. This happens in millions of sarcomeres simultaneously, causing the whole muscle to contract. When the nerve signal stops, calcium gets pumped back out, the binding sites get covered, myosin lets go, and the muscle relaxes. This process requires ATP. The myosin heads use ATP to power their pulling motion. This is why your muscles get tired during exercise. You're depleting ATP faster than you can make it. You're also accumulating metabolic byproducts like lactate and hydrogen ions, which interfere with muscle function. That burning sensation? That's acidosis, the drop in pH from accumulated hydrogen ions. Your muscles adapt to how you use them. Resistance training causes microtears in muscle fibers. When they repair, they come back thicker and stronger. This is hypertrophy. Endurance training increases the number of mitochondria in muscle cells, allowing them to produce more ATP aerobically. It also increases capillary density, improving oxygen delivery. Your body molds itself to meet the demands you place on it. There are two types of muscle fibers. Type I, slow twitch fibers, are fatigue resistant and used for endurance activities. Type 2, fast twitch fibers, generate more force but tire quickly and are used for power and speed. Everyone has both types in varying proportions, partly determined by genetics, partly by training. Cardiac muscle is striated like skeletal muscle, but involuntary like smooth muscle. It has its own rhythm, as we discussed. Cardiac muscle cells are branched and connected by gap junctions, allowing electrical signals to spread rapidly across the entire heart. This ensures synchronized contraction. Smooth muscle is non-striated and involuntary. It lines your blood vessels, intestines, bladder, uterus, and airways. It contracts more slowly than skeletal muscle, but can maintain contraction for longer periods. Peristalsis in your gut, the constriction of blood vessels, the contraction of your bladder, all smooth muscle. Your muscles couldn't do anything without a framework to pull against, your skeleton. You're born with about 300 bones, but some fuse as you grow, so adults have 206. Your skeleton supports your body, protects your organs, stores minerals, and produces blood cells. Bones are living tissue, constantly being broken down and rebuilt. Osteoclasts are cells that break down bone. Osteoblasts are cells that build new bone. This turnover allows bones to repair microdamage, adapt to stress, and release stored calcium when blood calcium drops. Your bones are incredibly strong. The femur, your thigh bone, can support 30 times your body weight before breaking. Bones are composite materials, combining a mineral component, mainly calcium phosphate, which provides hardness, and a protein component, mainly collagen, which provides flexibility. Take away the minerals and bone becomes rubbery. Take away the collagen and it becomes brittle. Your skeleton isn't just a passive framework, it's an endocrine organ. Bone cells produce a hormone called osteocalcin which affects insulin production, testosterone production, and brain function. Your bones are actively communicating with the rest of your body. Inside the marrow cavities of certain bones, red bone marrow produces all your blood cells, millions per second, constantly replacing old cells. As you age, some red marrow converts to yellow marrow, which is mostly fat, but it can convert back if you need more blood cell production, like after blood loss. Joints are where bones meet. Some are immovable, like the sutures in your skull. Others are slightly movable, like the joints between your vertebrae. And then you've got synovial joints, the freely movable ones, like your knees, elbows, and shoulders. Synovial joints are engineering marvels. The ends of the bones are covered with smooth articular cartilage, which provides a nearly frictionless surface. The joint is enclosed in a capsule filled with synovial fluid, which lubricates and nourishes the cartilage. Ligaments connect bone to bone, providing stability. It's a self-lubricating, self-maintaining hinge that can function for decades with minimal wear. But cartilage doesn't heal well because it doesn't have its own blood supply. Damage to cartilage, like in arthritis, is often permanent. This is why joint injuries can be so problematic. Now let's talk about your largest organ, your skin. It covers about 2 square meters and weighs about 3.6 kilograms. It's your barrier between your internal environment and the external world. And it does way more than just hold you together. Your skin has 3 layers. The outermost is the epidermis, made mostly of keratinocytes. These cells produce keratin, a tough protein that makes your skin waterproof and protects against abrasion. The outermost layer of the epidermis is dead cells, constantly sloughing off and being replaced from below. You shed about 30,000 to 40,000 dead skin cells every minute. Most of household dust is dead skin cells. The epidermis also contains melanocytes, which produce melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color and protects against UV radiation. More melanin means darker skin and better UV protection. Everyone has roughly the same number of melanocytes. The difference in skin color comes from how active those melanocytes are and what type of melanin they produce. Below the epidermis is the dermis, a thicker layer containing blood vessels, nerve endings, hair follicles, sweat glands, and sebaceous glands. The dermis is made mostly of collagen and elastin fibers, which gives skin its strength and elasticity. As you age, you produce less collagen and elastin, which is why skin becomes thinner and wrinkles form. Your skin has millions of sensory receptors. Meissner's corpuscles detect light touch. Pacinian corpuscles detect vibration and deep pressure. Merkel discs detect sustained pressure and texture. Free nerve endings detect pain, itch, and temperature. This is why your skin is so sensitive. It's constantly feeding your brain information about your environment. Hair grows from follicles in the dermis. Each hair is made of dead keratinized cells pushed up from the follicle. You have about 100,000 hairs on your scalp, each growing about half an inch per month. Each hair goes through cycles of growth, rest, and shedding. You lose about 50 to 100 scalp hairs per day normally. Attached to each hair follicle is a tiny muscle called the erector pili. When you're cold or scared, these muscles contract, pulling the hair upright, creating goosebumps. In furry animals, this makes the fur stand up, trapping more air for insulation, or making the animal look bigger to scare predators. In humans, it's mostly vestigial, a remnant of our hairier past. Sweat glands produce sweat, obviously. You have 2 types. Endocrine glands are all over your body and produce watery sweat that cools you through evaporation. Apocrine glands are mainly in your armpits and groin and produce a thicker sweat that bacteria love to eat, which is what causes body odor. Sebaceous glands produce sebum, an oily substance that keeps your skin and hair from drying out. Too much sebum can clog pores and lead to acne. Acne is an inflammatory response to bacteria, excess sebum, and clogged follicles. It's incredibly common, especially during adolescence when hormones ramp up sebum production. Your skin is also part of your immune system. It's a physical barrier, but it also secretes antimicrobial peptides that kill bacteria and fungi. The slightly acidic pH of your skin, around 5.5, inhibits the growth of many pathogens. And specialized immune cells in your skin, called Langerhans cells, capture pathogens and present them to other immune cells, initiating an immune response. When your skin gets cut, the healing process is remarkable. Blood clots to stop the bleeding. White blood cells flood the area to prevent infection. New blood vessels grow in. Fibroblasts produce collagen to close the wound. Epithelial cells migrate across the wound to restore the epidermis. If the wound is deep, you'll form a scar, which is denser collagen with less elasticity than normal skin. Your body prioritizes speed over aesthetics when closing wounds. Your body is picky about temperature. It wants to maintain a core temperature of about 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 Fahrenheit. Drift too far in either direction, and enzymes start malfunctioning. Proteins denature, and things go wrong quickly. So your body has an elaborate system for maintaining this narrow temperature range. Your hypothalamus is the thermostat. It monitors blood temperature and receives input from temperature receptors throughout your body. If your core temperature rises, your hypothalamus triggers cooling mechanisms. Blood vessels in. Your skin dilate, bringing warm blood to the surface where heat can radiate away. Your skin might appear flushed. You start sweating. As sweat evaporates, it carries heat away from your skin, cooling you down. If your core temperature drops, your hypothalamus triggers warming mechanisms. Blood vessels in your skin constrict, keeping warm blood deeper in your body. You stop sweating. Your muscles might start shivering. Rapid involuntary contractions that generate heat through friction. In extreme cold, your body will sacrifice your extremities to protect your core. Fingers and toes get cold first because your body is prioritizing vital organs. Brown fat, mostly found in infants but also present in small amounts in adults, generates heat through a process called non-shivering thermogenesis. The mitochondria in brown fat cells burn fat to produce heat directly instead of ATP. This is an emergency heating system. Fever is your body deliberately raising its temperature. When your immune system detects an infection, it releases chemicals called pyrogens that tell your hypothalamus to set the thermostat higher. Your body then works to reach this new set point. You might feel cold and shiver, even though you're hot, because your body thinks it needs to be even hotter. Why would your body do this? Because many pathogens are temperature sensitive. A few degrees can inhibit their growth and replication. A fever is your body creating a hostile environment for invaders. But too high a fever, above 40 degrees Celsius, becomes dangerous to you as well. Heat stroke is when your cooling mechanisms fail, and your core temperature rises dangerously high, potentially above 40 degrees. This is a medical emergency. Hypothermia is when your core temperature drops below 35 degrees. Your body slows down, mental function deteriorates, and without intervention, organs start failing. You generate heat constantly through cellular metabolism. Every chemical reaction in your body produces heat as a byproduct. Even at rest, you're producing about 100 watts of heat, similar to a light bulb. During intense exercise, this can increase tenfold. All that heat needs to be dissipated, or you'd cook yourself from the inside. Your body's ability to regulate temperature is part of homeostasis, the maintenance of stable internal conditions. Temperature, pH, electrolyte balance, blood sugar, blood pressure, all of these are carefully regulated within narrow ranges. Your body is constantly making tiny adjustments, responding to internal and external changes, maintaining equilibrium. Let's talk about sleep. You spend about a third of your life asleep. That's roughly 25 years if you live to 75. And it's not wasted time. Sleep is when your body repairs and maintains itself. It's absolutely essential. Sleep is regulated by two processes: the circadian rhythm, your internal 24-hour clock, and sleep pressure, the accumulation of sleep-promoting chemicals while you're awake. As you stay awake, adenosine builds up in your brain. Adenosine makes you feel sleepy. When you sleep, adenosine levels drop. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, which is why it keeps you awake. Your circadian rhythm is controlled by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your hypothalamus. It's synchronized primarily by light. When light hits your eyes, signals go to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, resetting your internal clock. This is why jet lag happens. Your internal clock is out of sync with the local time zone, and it takes a few days to adjust. Sleep isn't uniform. You cycle through different stages multiple times per night. Non-REM sleep has 3 stages. Stage 1 is light sleep, the transition between wakefulness and sleep. Stage 2 is deeper. Your heart rate slows, your body temperature drops. Most of your sleep time is spent in stage 2. Stage 3 is deep sleep, also called slow wave sleep because of the slow brain waves visible on an EEG. This is the most restorative stage. It's hard to wake someone from deep sleep, and if you do, they'll be groggy and disoriented. Then there's REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. Your eyes dart around under your eyelids. Your brain is highly active, almost as active as when you're awake. Most of your vivid dreams happen during REM sleep, but your body is paralyzed, except for your eyes and diaphragm. This paralysis prevents you from acting out your dreams. Sometimes the paralysis persists briefly after waking, a phenomenon called sleep paralysis, which can be terrifying. A full sleep cycle, from stage 1 through REM, takes about 90 minutes. You go through 4 to 6 cycles per night. Early in the night, you spend more time in deep sleep. Later in the night, you spend more time in deep sleep. Later in the night, you spend more time in REM. This is why sleeping only a few hours robs you of REM sleep more than deep sleep. During deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone, which stimulates growth and repair. Protein synthesis increases. Your immune system is boosted. Memories are consolidated, moved from short-term to long-term storage. Your brain clears out metabolic waste products through the glymphatic system, a waste clearance system that's most active during sleep. Sleep deprivation has serious consequences: impaired cognition, slowed reaction times, weakened immune function, increased risk of accidents, mood disturbances, and over the long term, increased risk of chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity. Your body needs sleep to function properly. Dreams are still not fully understood. They might be your brain processing memories, simulating scenarios, or just random neural activity that your conscious mind tries to make sense of. Whatever they are, they're fascinating and universal. Everyone dreams, even if they don't remember it. Let's talk about reproduction. It's one of the fundamental drives of all living things, the biological imperative to pass on genes. In humans, it's obviously more complex than just biology, but the physiological processes are remarkable. In males, sperm are produced continuously after puberty, in the testes through a process called spermatogenesis. It takes about 74 days for a sperm cell to mature. Mature sperm are stored in the epididymis until ejaculation. Each ejaculation releases about 200 to 300 million sperm. Why so many? Because it's an obstacle course. Sperm have to swim through the cervix, through the uterus, and into the fallopian tubes. Many die along the way. Of the millions that start, only a few hundred reach the egg, and only one fertilizes it. In females, all the eggs you'll ever have were formed before you were born. At birth, a female has about 1 to 2 million immature eggs. By puberty, that's down to about 300,000. Each month, one egg, sometimes more, matures and gets released during ovulation. The egg survives for about 12 to 24 hours. Sperm can survive in the female reproductive tract for up to 5 days. So there's roughly a 6-day window each month when conception is possible. The menstrual cycle is orchestrated by hormones. FSH from the pituitary stimulates egg development. Rising estrogen from the developing follicle triggers a surge of LH, also from the pituitary, which triggers ovulation. After ovulation, the empty follicle becomes the corpus luteum, which produces progesterone. Progesterone prepares the uterine lining for a potential pregnancy. If fertilization doesn't occur, the corpus luteum degenerates, progesterone drops, and the uterine lining sheds. That's menstruation. If fertilization does occur, the resulting zygote starts dividing as it travels down the fallopian tube toward the uterus. About a week after fertilization, it implants in the uterine lining, The outer cells of the embryo start producing human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, the hormone that pregnancy tests detect. HCG maintains the corpus luteum, which keeps producing progesterone, which maintains the uterine lining and prevents menstruation. Over the next 9 months, a single cell becomes a baby. It's an astonishing process. Cells divide, differentiate, organize into tissues and organs. The embryo develops in a fluid-filled sac, cushioned and protected. The placenta forms, connecting the fetal circulation to the maternal circulation, allowing oxygen and nutrients to pass from mother to baby, and waste products to pass from baby to mother. The umbilical cord is the lifeline. Heart starts beating around week 3. Limb buds appear. Organs form. By the end of the first trimester, all major structures are present, just small and immature. The second and third trimesters are mainly about growth and maturation. The lungs are among the last organs to fully mature, which is why premature babies often have respiratory problems. When it's time for birth, the hypothalamus and pituitary ramp up oxytocin production. Oxytocin causes the uterus to contract. Contractions start slow and irregular, then become stronger and more frequent. The cervix dilates. Eventually, contractions push the baby out through the birth canal. After the baby is born, a few more contractions expel the placenta. Childbirth is painful. It's one of the most intense physical experiences a person can have. But the body has mechanisms to cope. Endorphins, natural painkillers, increase during labor. And immediately after birth, there's a surge of oxytocin and other hormones that promote bonding and reduce stress. Evolution has shaped this process over millions of years. After birth, the baby's physiology changes dramatically. In the womb, the baby didn't use its lungs. Oxygen came from the placenta. At birth, the baby takes its first breath, inflating the lungs. The circulatory system reconfigures. Blood that bypassed the lungs in utero now flows through them. Within hours, the baby transitions from being completely dependent on the mother's body to being a separate, breathing individual. Aging is the progressive loss of physiological function over time. It's universal among complex organisms. Why we age is still debated, but the how is becoming clearer. At the cellular level, aging is associated with several changes. Telomeres, protective caps on the ends of chromosomes, shorten with each cell division. Eventually, they become so short that the cell can no longer divide. It becomes senescent or dies. This limits the number of times a cell can divide, known as the Hayflick limit. DNA accumulates damage over time. Most of it gets repaired, but repair mechanisms aren't perfect. Some damage persists. Mutations accumulate. Some of these mutations can lead to cancer, which is why cancer risk increases with age. Mitochondria, the power plants of cells, also accumulate damage. They become less efficient at producing ATP. They produce more reactive oxygen species, free radicals that damage cellular components. Cells have antioxidant defenses, but these become less effective with age. Proteins can become misfolded or damaged and aggregate inside cells, interfering with function. Cells have systems to break down and recycle damaged proteins, but these systems decline with age. Accumulation of damaged proteins is a hallmark of many age-related diseases like Alzheimer's. Stem cells, which replenish tissues, become less active with age. This reduces the body's ability to repair and regenerate. Wound healing slows. Immune function declines, a phenomenon called immunosenescence. Older people are more susceptible to infections and less responsive to vaccines. Chronic inflammation increases with age, sometimes called inflammaging. Low-level inflammation contributes to many age-related diseases, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and dementia. Hormones change. Growth hormone and sex hormones decline. This affects muscle mass, bone density, energy levels, and mood. Metabolism slows. It becomes easier to gain weight and harder to lose it. Sensory systems decline. Vision worsens. Hearing diminishes, especially for high frequencies. taste and smell become less acute. The lens of the eye becomes less flexible, making it harder to focus on close objects. Presbyopia. The eardrum and ossicles become less efficient, and hair cells in the cochlea die, causing hearing loss. Skin loses elasticity and thickness. Wrinkles form. Age spots appear. Hair grays as melanocytes in hair follicles stop producing pigment or die. Bones lose density, especially in postmenopausal women when estrogen drops. This can lead to osteoporosis, where bones become fragile and prone to fractures. Cartilage wears down, leading to arthritis. Muscles lose mass and strength, sarcopenia. Cognitive decline is common, but not inevitable. Some memory decline is normal, but severe dementia is pathological. Alzheimer's disease, characterized by amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles in the brain, is the most common cause of dementia. We still don't fully understand what causes it or how to prevent it. But aging isn't uniform. Some people age faster than others. Genetics plays a role, but so does lifestyle. Diet, exercise, sleep, stress, smoking, alcohol, all of these affect how you age. Caloric restriction, for example, extends lifespan in many species, though it's unclear if it works in humans. Exercise preserves muscle mass, bone density, cardiovascular health, and cognitive function. There's also evidence that attitude matters. People with a sense of purpose, strong social connections, and a positive outlook tend to live longer and healthier lives. The mind-body connection is real. We've talked about organs and systems, but let's zoom in further. To the cell. You're made of about 37 trillion cells. Each one is a self-contained unit of life, carrying out the processes necessary to stay alive. Every cell has a membrane, a lipid bilayer that separates the inside from the outside. Embedded in this membrane are proteins that act as channels, pumps, receptors, and identifiers. The membrane controls what enters and exits, maintains electrical gradients, and receives signals. Inside the cell, floating in the cytoplasm, are organelles, specialized structures that perform specific functions. The nucleus contains your DNA, the instruction manual. DNA is organized into 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. Genes are segments of DNA that code for proteins. When a gene is activated, the DNA is transcribed into messenger RNA, which leaves the nucleus and travels to ribosomes. Ribosomes are molecular machines that read mRNA and assemble amino acids into proteins. Proteins are the workhorses of the cell. They're enzymes, structural components, transporters, receptors, antibodies. Almost everything the cell does involves proteins. The endoplasmic reticulum is a network of membranes where proteins and lipids are synthesized and modified. The rough ER has ribosomes on it and makes proteins. The smooth ER makes lipids and detoxifies certain chemicals. The Golgi apparatus processes and packages proteins, tagging them for delivery to specific destinations inside or outside the cell. Think of it as the cell's post office. Mitochondria are the power plants, producing most of the cell's ATP through cellular respiration. They have their own DNA, separate from nuclear DNA, inherited only from your mother. This is evidence that mitochondria were once independent bacteria that entered into a symbiotic relationship with early cells billions of years ago. Lysosomes are the recycling centers, containing enzymes that break down waste, damaged organelles, and material brought in from outside the cell. Peroxisomes break down fatty acids and detoxify hydrogen peroxide. The cytoskeleton is a network of protein filaments that gives the cell shape, enables movement, and transports materials within the cell. Microtubules, intermediate filaments, and microfilaments each play different roles. Cells communicate with each other through various signals. Hormones, neurotransmitters, and other signaling molecules bind to receptors on the cell surface, triggering cascades of chemical reactions inside the cell that alter its behavior. Cells also communicate through direct contact, gap junctions that allow molecules to pass between adjacent cells. Cells divide through mitosis. The DNA replicates, the chromosomes condense, the nuclear envelope breaks down, the chromosomes line up, and they're pulled apart into two daughter cells. Each daughter cell gets a complete set of chromosomes. Cell division is how you grow, how wounds heal, how tissues are maintained. Some cells divide frequently. Skin cells, gut lining cells, blood cells. Others rarely divide or don't divide at all. Neurons, for the most part, don't divide after you're born, which is why brain injuries are so serious. Cardiac muscle cells also rarely divide, which is why heart damage often results in scar tissue rather than regeneration. Cells are constantly sensing their environment and responding. They're not passive. They're dynamic, adaptive, responsive, and they're cooperating. Every cell in your body is working together, following the same genetic blueprint, differentiated into specialized types, coordinating through elaborate communication networks. It's easy to think of yourself as a single entity, but you're really a community of trillions of cells, each one alive, each one contributing to the whole. And those cells are made of molecules, which are made of atoms, which are mostly empty space. You're mostly empty space, held together by electromagnetic forces, arranged in patterns of stunning complexity. Pain deserves its own discussion because it's such a fundamental part of the human experience. Pain is your body's alarm system. It tells you something is wrong and you need to do something about it. There are different types of pain. Nociceptive pain results from tissue damage. You stub your toe, that's nociceptive pain. Neuropathic pain results from nerve damage. It can feel like burning, tingling, or shooting sensations. Inflammatory pain is associated with inflammation, like arthritis. And then there's psychogenic pain, where psychological factors play a major role. When tissue is damaged, cells release chemicals like prostaglandins, substance P, and bradykinin. These chemicals activate nociceptors, pain receptors, which are free nerve endings scattered throughout your body. The nociceptors send signals through peripheral nerves to your spinal cord. There are two types of pain fibers. A delta fibers are fast, myelinated, and transmit sharp, localized pain. This is the immediate pain you feel when you cut yourself. C fibers are slow, unmyelinated, and transmit dull, aching, diffuse pain. This is the throbbing pain that comes after. In your spinal cord, these signals can be modulated. The gate control theory suggests that non-painful input can close the gates to painful input. This is why rubbing a sore spot makes it feel better. You're activating touch receptors that inhibit pain signals. Pain signals then travel up the spinal cord to your brain, to the thalamus, which relays them to the somatosensory cortex, where the location and intensity are processed, and to the limbic system, where the emotional component is processed. Pain isn't just a sensory experience, it's an emotional one. This is why pain can be so distressing. Your brain also has descending pain modulation pathways. Signals from the brain can inhibit pain transmission in the spinal cord. This is partly how opioids work, both natural endorphins and external drugs like morphine. They activate these descending pathways and inhibit pain signals. Pain perception is highly variable. The same injury can cause different amounts of pain in different people or in the same person under different circumstances. Stress, fear, and attention can amplify pain. Distraction, relaxation, and positive emotions can reduce it. Chronic pain can even rewire your nervous system, making you more sensitive to pain, a phenomenon called central sensitization. Phantom limb pain is particularly fascinating and tragic. People who have lost a limb often still feel pain in the missing limb. The limb is gone, but the neural representation of it in the brain remains. The brain is still receiving signals, or interpreting the absence of signals as pain. Your body has remarkable healing abilities. When you get injured, a complex cascade of events begins immediately. We've touched on some of this, but let's go deeper. Inflammation is the first response to injury. Blood vessels at the injury site dilate, increasing blood flow. That's why the area becomes red and warm. Vessel walls become more permeable, allowing fluid and immune cells to leak into the tissue. That's why you get swelling. The increased pressure and chemicals released by damaged cells stimulate pain receptors. That's why it hurts. This might seem counterproductive, but inflammation serves crucial purposes. It brings immune cells to fight infection, removes damaged tissue and debris, and initiates the repair process. The classic signs of inflammation are redness, heat, swelling, pain, and loss of function. All of them have a purpose. Neutrophils arrive first within minutes to hours, eating bacteria and debris. Monocytes arrive next and transform into macrophages, which continue cleaning up and also secrete growth factors that stimulate repair. Fibroblasts migrate into the wound and start producing collagen, building new tissue. In damaged blood vessels, angiogenesis occurs. New capillaries sprout and grow into the wound, restoring blood supply. Without blood supply, healing can't proceed. This is why diabetes, which damages blood vessels, impairs wound healing. If tissue damage is minor and the underlying structure is intact, regeneration can occur. The original tissue type is restored. Liver has remarkable regenerative capacity. You can remove up to 75% of the liver and it will regrow, though the original structure might not be perfectly replicated. If damage is more extensive, repair occurs through scar formation. Fibroblasts lay down collagen in a somewhat haphazard manner, creating scar tissue. It's functional. It closes the wound, but it's not the same as the original tissue. It's denser, less elastic, and lacks the specialized cells of the original tissue. Bone healing is interesting. When a bone breaks, a blood clot forms. This becomes a soft callus of cartilage. The cartilage is then replaced by a hard callus of new bone. Finally, the bone is remodeled, with osteoclasts removing excess bone and osteoblasts shaping it, often restoring nearly the original structure. A healed bone can actually be stronger at the break site than it was before. Nerve regeneration in the peripheral nervous system is possible but slow. If a nerve is cut but the surrounding sheath remains intact, the axon can regrow along the old path at about 1 millimeter per day. But if the nerve is severely damaged, regeneration may not reach the target, resulting in permanent loss of function. The central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord, has very limited regenerative capacity. Once neurons die, they're generally not replaced. There's some neurogenesis in specific areas, like the hippocampus, but it's limited. This is why injuries to the brain and spinal cord are so devastating. Your body is always balancing damage and repair. Every day, you're accumulating damage at the molecular, cellular, and tissue levels, and every day, repair mechanisms are working to fix it. When you're young, repair outpaces damage. As you age, damage starts to outpace repair. That's aging in a nutshell. We've talked about the physical brain, but we haven't talked about consciousness. What is it like to be you? This is one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy. Consciousness is your subjective experience. The redness of red, the pain of pain, the taste of coffee, the feeling of being. Yourself. Philosophers call these qualia. Science can explain the mechanisms, the neurons firing, the neurotransmitters releasing, but it's much harder to explain why there's something it's like to be you. Your brain processes information unconsciously most of the time. Visual processing, movement coordination, pattern recognition, most of this happens below the level of awareness. Consciousness seems to be what emerges when information is integrated and accessible to various cognitive systems, when you can report on it, reflect on it, use it to guide behavior. The thalamus and cortex seem to be critical for consciousness. Damage to these areas can result in loss of consciousness or altered states. The brainstem maintains arousal, the general level of wakefulness, but the cortex is where the content of consciousness resides. There are theories. Global workspace theory suggests that consciousness is like a spotlight. At any moment, some information is in the spotlight, broadcasted to many brain systems, and that's what you're conscious of. Everything else is in the dark, processed unconsciously. Integrated information theory suggests that consciousness corresponds to the amount of integrated information in a system. The more interconnected and differentiated the information processing, the more conscious the system is. By this measure, your brain, with its billions of neurons and trillions of connections, has an enormous amount of consciousness. But we don't really know. We can't measure consciousness directly. We can only infer it from behavior and brain activity. This is the hard problem of consciousness. Why is there subjective experience at all? Why aren't we just zombies processing information without any inner life? Your sense of self, of being a continuous person over time, is constructed by your brain. Memories, personality, beliefs, they're all patterns of neural activity. When those patterns are disrupted by injury or disease, your sense of self can change. Split brain patients whose corpus callosum has been severed show evidence of two separate consciousnesses, one in each hemisphere. Free will is another puzzle. You feel like you're making choices, but neuroscience shows that brain activity corresponding to a decision begins before you're consciously aware of making the decision. Does that mean free will is an illusion? Or is the unconscious preparation part of the decision-making process that constitutes your will? It's complicated. Consciousness might be what it feels like to be a certain kind of information processing system. Your brain evolved not to understand reality perfectly, but to help you survive and reproduce. Your conscious experience is an interface, a useful fiction that represents relevant information in a way you can act on. Let's talk about death. It's inevitable. Every physiological process we've discussed eventually stops. Death can occur in different ways. Cardiac death is when your heart stops. Without circulation, organs stop receiving oxygen. Brain death is when all brain function, including the brainstem, ceases irreversibly. In most legal definitions, brain death is death, even if the heart is still beating with life support. When the heart stops, you have about 4 to 6 minutes before brain damage begins. This is why CPR is so important. It manually pumps blood, maintaining some circulation, buying time until the heart can be restarted. If circulation isn't restored, cells begin dying. Without oxygen, they can't produce ATP. Ion pumps fail. Cell membranes lose integrity. Cells swell and rupture. Enzymes leak out and start breaking down surrounding tissue. Different tissues have different tolerances. Brain cells are most sensitive, dying within minutes. Heart and kidney cells can last a bit longer. Bone and skin cells can survive for hours. As organs fail, waste products accumulate. Carbon dioxide builds up in the blood. Lactic acid increases. pH drops. The body's carefully maintained internal environment collapses. Rigor mortis sets in a few hours after death as ATP depletion prevents muscle fibers from releasing their contraction. Muscles stiffen. After a day or two, enzyme activity breaks down the muscle proteins and the stiffness resolves. Decomposition begins immediately. Bacteria, mainly from the gut, start breaking down tissues. Flies lay eggs. The body returns to the environment, completing the cycle. But the line between life and death isn't always sharp. People have been revived after their heart stopped. Some cells continue functioning briefly after death. Organ donation is possible because some organs can be preserved and transplanted. Near-death experiences, vivid conscious experiences reported by some people who came close to death, are fascinating. Common elements include feeling detached from the body, moving through a tunnel toward a light, feeling peace, encountering deceased loved ones. These could be hallucinations produced by a dying brain. Oxygen deprivation, endorphins, abnormal activity in the temporal lobe, all could contribute. Or they could be something else. We don't know. Death is the end of your individual existence, but the atoms that make up your body persist. They'll be recycled, incorporated into other organisms, scattered across the earth. You're made of star stuff, as Carl Sagan said. Those atoms were forged in the cores of ancient stars, scattered across space, collected into planets, and organized into the improbable structure that is you. And after you die, they'll go on to become parts of other things. In a sense, you're a temporary pattern, a brief organization of matter and energy that thinks and feels and experiences. And that's both humbling and profound. So here we are. We've traveled through your body, from the breath you take to the beat of your heart, from the digestion of food to the firing of neurons, from the smallest cell to the grandest questions of consciousness and mortality. What does it all mean? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But one thing is certain. You are an absolutely staggering piece of biological engineering. Every second, your body performs operations of such complexity that our most advanced technology can't come close to replicating it. Your immune system identifies and destroys thousands of threats without you knowing. Your digestive system extracts energy and nutrients from whatever you eat. Your nervous system processes sensory information, coordinates movement, generates thoughts and emotions. Your endocrine system maintains balance through chemical signals. Your cardiovascular system delivers resources to every cell. Your kidneys filter waste. Your liver detoxifies. Your skin protects. All of it, every moment, mostly without your conscious input. And the remarkable thing is that it's all you. There's no little person inside your head pulling levers. You are the process. You are the pattern of activity in your nervous system. You are the metabolism in your cells. You are the interaction of systems that creates this unified experience of being alive. We've been trained to think of ourselves as minds that happen to have bodies, but it's more accurate to say we are bodies. Conscious, feeling, thinking bodies. Your thoughts are electrical patterns. Your emotions are chemical states. Your memories are synaptic configurations. You are biological through and through, and that doesn't make you less meaningful. If anything, it makes you more remarkable. Consider the odds. The probability of you specifically existing is vanishingly small. A different sperm, and you wouldn't. Be you. Different grandparents, different great-grandparents, go back far enough and change any link in that chain, and you don't exist. You're the result of an unbroken line of reproduction stretching back billions of years, through every ancestor, human and pre-human, back to the first self-replicating molecule. Every single one of your ancestors survived, long enough to reproduce. And now you're here. You're also the product of 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution. Hydrogen atoms formed in the Big Bang. Stars formed, fused those atoms into heavier elements, exploded, scattered those elements into space. New stars and planets formed. From that enriched material, life emerged on at least one planet, evolved for billions of years, and here you are, the universe become conscious of itself. Your body is a temporary arrangement, but while it lasts, it's extraordinary. You can think, feel, love, create, understand. You can contemplate your own existence. You can appreciate beauty, solve problems, imagine possibilities that don't exist yet. And despite all the complexity, despite all the systems and mechanisms, there's an underlying simplicity. Your body wants to survive. It wants homeostasis. It wants to maintain its organized state against the tide of entropy. Every process we've discussed serves that end. And built on top of that basic drive is everything else. Your personality, your dreams, your relationships, your contributions. So take a moment. Feel your heartbeat. Feel your breath. Notice the weight of your body, the temperature of your skin. You're alive, right now. All those trillions of cells, all those countless reactions, they're happening in you, as you. You are the universe experiencing itself, a pattern of matter and energy capable of wonder. You've been lying here, listening, breathing, existing. Your body has been doing its thing this whole time. Your heart, beating. Your blood flowing. Your neurons firing. And tomorrow it'll do it all again. And the day after. Until one day it won't. But right now, in this moment, you're here. That's physiology. That's you. An impossibly complex, staggeringly beautiful biological system, shaped by evolution, powered by biochemistry, sustained by countless unconscious processes, and somehow, mysteriously, giving rise to consciousness, to experience, to you. Rest now. Let your body do what it does best. Repair, restore, regenerate. You're in good hands. Your own hands. Your own remarkable, temporary, miraculous body. Sleep well. So here we are, at the end of this journey through the landscape of you. We started with a single breath, and we've traveled through every major system that keeps you alive. But before you drift off to sleep, let's take a moment to really appreciate what we've discovered together. Think about what's happening right now, in this very moment. Your diaphragm is contracting rhythmically, pulling air into your lungs without you telling it to. 300 million alveoli are exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide. Your heart is beating. It just beat again, pushing 5 liters of blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels. Red blood cells are carrying oxygen to every corner of your body. White blood cells are patrolling for threats. Platelets are standing ready to seal any breach. In your gut, trillions of bacteria are working alongside your own cells, breaking down your last meal, synthesizing vitamins, training your immune system. Your liver is processing nutrients, detoxifying chemicals, producing bile. Your kidneys are filtering your blood, precisely regulating the concentration of every electrolyte, maintaining the exact pH your enzymes need to function. Your pancreas is monitoring your blood sugar, releasing insulin or glucagon as needed. Your nervous system is firing. Right now, billions of neurons are communicating through trillions of synapses. Sensory information is flooding in from millions of receptors. Your brain is processing these words, connecting them to memories, perhaps triggering emotions or thoughts. Your autonomic nervous system is adjusting your heart rate, your blood pressure, your digestion, all without bothering your conscious mind. Your endocrine system is orchestrating long-term regulation. Hormones are traveling through your bloodstream, binding to receptors, altering the behavior of cells throughout your body. Your circadian clock is tracking time, preparing you for sleep. Melatonin is rising. Growth hormone will peak in a few hours, driving cellular repair. Your muscles are relaxed right now, but even at rest, they're maintaining tone, ready to contract the moment you need them. Your bones are supporting you, and deep inside them, your marrow is producing millions of new blood cells every second. Your skin is protecting you, sensing the world, regulating temperature. And all of this, every single process we've discussed, is happening simultaneously. It's not sequential. It's parallel. It's a symphony of biological processes, each one complex enough to fill textbooks, all happening at once, coordinated with precision that makes our most sophisticated technology look primitive. Here's what's beautiful. Despite all this overwhelming complexity, there's a simplicity underneath. Every process serves the same ultimate purpose: maintain homeostasis, stay alive, reproduce. Every system we've discussed is part of an integrated whole, working toward the same goals. Your body doesn't have competing interests. Every cell, every organ, every system is cooperating. You are a community working in harmony. And yet, from that simple biological imperative emerges something extraordinary: consciousness, self-awareness, the ability to contemplate your own existence, the capacity for love, creativity, morality, spirituality. You're not just a survival machine. You're a person with hopes and dreams and fears and memories. You're capable of appreciating beauty, creating art, seeking truth, caring for others. How does that happen? How does matter become meaning? How do chemical reactions become conscious experience? We still don't fully know. It's one of the great mysteries. But what we do know is that it's happening in you right now. Your biological processes are giving rise to your subjective experience. The physical and the mental aren't separate. They're two perspectives on the same thing. You are embodied consciousness. You are the universe experiencing itself. Before tonight, you might have taken your body for granted. Most of us do. We wake up, we go about our day, and we don't think about the fact that we're piloting the most complex structure in the known universe. But now you know. You understand, at least a little bit, what's actually happening inside you. And there's something deeply meaningful about that understanding. When you feel your heart beat, you now know about the electrical conduction system, the 4 chambers, the valves opening and closing in perfect sequence. When you breathe, you know about the respiratory center in your medulla, the negative pressure drawing air in, the gas exchange happening in millions of alveoli. When you eat, you know about the entire journey food takes, from mechanical and chemical digestion to absorption to cellular respiration. This knowledge connects you to yourself in a profound way. You're not a mystery to yourself anymore. You're knowable, understandable, and in understanding, there's often appreciation. Your body is worthy of respect, of care, of gratitude. It's doing so much for you, asking so little in return. Just some food, some water, some sleep, some movement. Give it those things, and it will serve you faithfully for decades. We've also learned about fragility. How many things can go wrong? How delicate the balance is. A few minutes without oxygen and your brain starts dying. A blocked artery and your heart muscle dies. A mutation in a single gene and you develop disease. Your body is robust, but it's not invincible. It can be damaged. It can fail. But we've also learned about resilience. Your body can heal. Bones can knit back together, stronger than before. Skin can close wounds. Your liver can regenerate. Your immune system can learn and remember. Your brain can rewire itself. You have redundancy built in. 2 kidneys, 2 lungs, a distributed nervous system. You can adapt. You can recover. Within limits, but those limits are impressive. And maybe that's a lesson for life in general. You're more resilient than you think. You've survived everything that's happened to you so far. Your body has carried you through illness, injury, stress, heartbreak. It's kept going. It's kept you alive. And it will continue to do so, one breath at a time, one heartbeat at a time, until it can't anymore. That brings us back to mortality. Everything we've discussed tonight will eventually stop. Your heart will beat its last beat. Your lungs will take their last breath. Your neurons will fire for the last time. The pattern that is you will dissolve. The atoms will scatter and become parts of other things. That's not morbid. It's just reality. It's the nature of existence. But doesn't that make this moment more precious? Right now, you're alive. You exist. You have this narrow window of time to be conscious, to experience, to matter. You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose to be born. But here you are, gifted with existence, with this extraordinary biological system that lets you see and hear and feel and think. What you do with that gift is up to you. But at minimum, maybe it's worth pausing occasionally to appreciate it, to feel genuine gratitude for the fact that your heart is beating, that you can draw breath, that you can experience this strange and beautiful thing called life. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, as your brain transitions through sleep stages, and your body begins its nightly maintenance routine, I want you to hold on to this sense of wonder. You are remarkable. Not because you're perfect. You're not. Not because you're invincible. You're not that either. But because you're an organized pattern of matter and energy that has somehow become conscious enough to contemplate its own existence. That's astonishing. Tomorrow, when you wake up, you'll still be you. Your body will still be doing all these things we've talked about, but maybe you'll notice it more. Maybe you'll feel your heartbeat and smile. Maybe you'll take a deep breath and appreciate your respiratory system. Maybe you'll eat a meal and think about the journey that food is about to take. Or maybe you'll just go about your day. And that's fine too. Your body will keep working either way. That's what it does. That's what it's designed for. Billions of years of evolution have produced this system that just works. Automatically. Constantly. Faithfully. You are 37 trillion cells cooperating to create a conscious experience. You are matter that has organized itself into a form capable of asking questions about matter. You are the universe's way of knowing itself. You are atoms that have become aware of atoms. You are biology that has become biography. And tonight, as you sleep, your body will continue its work. Cells will divide. Proteins will be synthesized. Memories will be consolidated. Tissues will be repaired. Waste will be processed. Hormones will be secreted. Neurons will prune unnecessary connections and strengthen important ones. Your body knows what to do. It's been doing it since before you were born, and it will continue until the end. So rest easy. You're in the best possible hands. Your own. Your remarkable, temporary, beautiful, miraculous body will take care of you through the night. And tomorrow, it'll do it all again. Thank you for taking this journey through yourself. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being curious about the extraordinary machine you inhabit. Sleep well, dream well, and remember, every moment you're alive is a small miracle of biology, physics, and chemistry working in perfect harmony. You are amazing. Your body is amazing. This existence is amazing. Good night. This comprehensive script takes the listener through a detailed yet engaging journey of human body physiology, covering respiratory system and breathing, cardiovascular system and blood digestive system and metabolism, urinary system and filtration, immune system and microbiome nervous system, and brain function, sensory systems, endocrine system and hormones, muscular and skeletal systems, integumentary system, skin, temperature regulation, sleep physiology, reproductive system, aging and cellular processes, pain mechanisms, healing and regeneration, consciousness, death and mortality, final reflections on human existence.